It's truly mind-blowing that in the year of our Lord 2026, people still rely on proprietary software for critical functions like full disk encryption. Yet here we are with the average PC user trusting BitLocker to keep their data safe day in and day out. Well, there was a recent incident where a security researcher stumbled upon a severe weakness in BitLocker, perhaps even a backdoor maybe, that three-letter agencies have been using for years to access people's data when they think it's protected. Now, in most cases, you would think that the Alphabet Boys would just get the BitLocker recovery key from Microsoft directly in order to access encrypted data on a suspect's laptop. But if you didn't create a Microsoft account during the Windows setup, then there's a good chance that those recovery keys stay out of Microsoft's cloud completely, and so police would need another mechanism to access that data, which might be what a security researcher who goes by the name Chaotic Eclipse had discovered. But you guys can be the judge of that. So if we look at this researcher's GitHub page, they're hosting several repos that have Windows vulnerabilities. These first two repos, called Red Sun and Blue Hammer, are both privilege escalation tools that are designed to abuse Microsoft Defender in order to achieve system-level privileges. And you got to appreciate the irony of turning one of the most widely used security appliances, certainly the most widely used consumer security appliance, into a privilege escalation vector. Now, before we get into the technical details of how all these exploits work, let's first talk about why these exploits, some of which are unpatched, meaning there's still machines out there that are vulnerable to them, why these are publicly accessible on the internet for every script kiddie and their mother to use. So in the hacking/penetration testing world, usually when you discover a serious exploit like this, you keep it to yourself until you can contact the vendor or company that's responsible to fix this bug. And in most cases, that company is going to pay you a fee called a bug bounty for doing that responsible disclosure. And even if you're a criminal hacker, or a black hat as they're often called, they still typically keep the details of the bug to themselves so that the company doesn't catch wind of it and patch the exploit hole. Or maybe if they do give away this malware to anybody, they sell that code on the dark web somewhere, but they don't just paste it in a public GitHub repo for the whole world to have. So the reason that this happened is because the author of this malware is a hacker that feels like they have been wronged by Microsoft. So like I said, if you're one of the good guy hackers, the usual course is that you report the bug to the vendors that are responsible for the product and they give you some money. Companies like Microsoft actually have a dedicated arm of their company for this called the Microsoft Security Response Center. And they pay you different amounts, different bug bounties, depending on the products and services that you find an exploit in. For example, with Copilot bugs, they'll pay you between $250 up to $30,000, and for Azure bugs, Microsoft's cloud appliance, they'll pay you $1,250 up to $60,000, and sometimes more, depending on if the bugs are very, very severe. Now, bug bounties are kind of a difficult thing to navigate, and really the crux of that whole system relies on the company and the person that is making the report following the honor system. The researcher has to provide Microsoft with enough evidence of a real security problem when they report it, at least enough in most cases so that Microsoft can reproduce the issue and not just say, oh, this works on my machine, I can't reproduce a problem, therefore it doesn't exist. And then, when the company can confirm the problem, they have to actually cough up the dough that they say they would for this researcher responsibly disclosing the information to them first and giving them time to fix it before they go and write a blog post and post a proof of concept onto GitHub. And ideally, they should also work with the researcher during the patching phase in order to make sure that the bug is fully fixed, because obviously their internal security team failed to catch this problem. But according to this hacker's blog post, Microsoft did not hold up their end of the bargain, so they went ahead and released the malware out onto the internet for anybody to use and do whatever they feel like doing with it. Blue Hammer targets the Microsoft Defender signature update process, chaining together multiple legitimate Windows features, including volume shadow copy service, the Cloud Files API, and opportunistic locks, in order to exploit a time of check to time of use race condition. The exploit does not require kernel bugs, memory corruption, or admin privileges. That's the whole point of using it, is to get admin privileges. And when successful, it leaks the security account manager database through a VSS snapshot. It extracts the NTLM password hashes, takes over a local administrator account, and then spawns a system-level shell. It also restores the original password hash afterward in order to help avoid detection. Red Sun exploits a logic flaw in Windows Defender's file remediation path, which allows a standard user to redirect Defender's own restore write into the System32 file. When Defender detects a cloud-tagged malicious file, it writes the file back to its original detection path without validating whether that path has been replaced with a junction point. And then, just when you think the situation can't get any more ridiculous, the researcher comes back with Yellow Key. So now we're not just talking about Defender being turned into a privilege escalation vector, we're talking about a BitLocker bypass and another local privilege escalation primitive released publicly in the same scorched earth style. So the Yellow Key 0-day bypasses BitLocker encryption on Windows 11 and Windows Server 2022 and 2025. The exploit abuses a debugging feature left inside the Windows recovery environment. It forces the recovery system to unlock the drive for testing purposes, but then interrupts the process in order to keep it unlocked. The debugging feature also has a stark lack of documentation for it, which is part of the reason that the researcher believes this could honestly be a backdoor. And it is really strange. I mean, this whole thing kind of reminds me of the Intel Management Engine, another kind of backdoor that's present in every Intel chipped machine, because why would Microsoft purposefully include a bug like this in BitLocker encryption, arguably one of the most widely used full disk encryption applications in the world? Or hell, if this bug is truly not intentional, I mean, if it's just, total lack of competence on Microsoft's part, then that's just a perfect example why you should not trust mission critical processes like full disk encryption to proprietary services like BitLocker. You should only trust them to free and open source solutions like Lux encryption. Now, like most unpatched exploits, these POCs don't just exist on a GitHub repo somewhere to stand as a testament against Microsoft. These malware tools are actively being used in the wild, which has been reported by cybersecurity companies like Huntress. Same goes for the Green Plasma exploit, which actually is not a full POC according to the author. There's a bit more that's needed, a few tweaks that you have to change to the code they released in order to get an actual system shell. And I think part of the reason that the author of this malware did that was in order to make it harder for Microsoft to patch, because obviously if Microsoft is able to access these exploits, which I'm sure they can, I mean, the author posted them on GitHub, which is another layer of irony. Microsoft owns GitHub, in case you didn't know. So malware that's able to exploit their systems is literally just being posted on another online service that they use. Now, luckily, all of these malware exploits are local privilege escalation. So in other words, they can't really affect your system until someone already has some kind of access to it, usually some kind of remote code execution, and then they run these scripts in order to elevate their privileges to system, and then it's off to the races. They fully own your computer at that point. And of course, Yellow Key, being a BitLocker bypasser, requires physical access to your computer in order to break it. So if you're like so many people these days who just stay inside of their house and never touch grass, then, I mean, ironically, you're maybe safer from this exploit than the people who go out with their laptops. Now, as for the other exploits, Blue Hammer was patched by Microsoft on April 14th, 2026, which lends a little bit of credence to the researcher's story that Microsoft decided to screw them over instead of actually pay them a bug bounty, assuming that this researcher truly was the first person to report the problem. I mean, I guess there's a chance that somebody else reported it and Microsoft paid them. We really only just have one side of, the conversation, or one side of the incident here coming from the hacker's blog post. And that researcher also claimed that the Red Sun vulnerability was silently patched. So this is something where we didn't even get any disclosure at all. There was no CVE, no nothing, just apparently it doesn't work anymore. But it seems like there are no current fixes for green plasma, and for yellow key. So be very careful with the files that you download and execute on your machine, because you never know when you might get compromised by a script kiddie using zero-day malware published by a security researcher that was wronged by a trillion-dollar tech company. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it to hack the algorithm, and check out my online store, based.win, where you can buy my awesome merch or accessories for your phone or laptop. 10% store-wide discount when you pay with Monero XMR at checkout. Have a great rest of your day.